News when you want it with Bloomberg News Now. I'm Nathan Hager.
And I'm Karen Moscow.
Karen, we begin in Minneapolis, where President Trump may be signaling a strategy shift after the deaths of 2 U.S. citizens in immigration raids this month. The president says he's sending his border czar, Tom Homan, to the city. The man who had been overseeing ICE operations there, Border Patrol Commander-at-Large Greg Bovino, is expected to leave as soon as today. Homan is seen as more measured in his approach than Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem, but White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt says this is not a sign that the president has lost confidence in Noem.
Mr. Homan is doing an exceptional job, and he has been working with Secretary Noem and President Trump over the course of the last year. Secretary Noem still has the utmost confidence and trust of the President of the United States, and she's continuing to oversee the entire Department of Homeland Security and all of the immigration enforcement that's taking place across the whole entire country.
Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt spoke at the White House news conference, and the New York Times reports President Trump met with Secretary Noem for nearly 2 hours in the Oval Office yesterday, but did not suggest her job was at risk. President Trump says he also spoke with Minnesota Governor Tim Walz and will consider independent investigations into the shootings and reducing the number of federal agents in the state.
Nathan, outrage over the shooting death of Minneapolis ICU nurse Alex Pretti now has Washington hurtling toward a government shutdown at the end of the week. Senate Democrats are threatening to vote against funds for the Department of Homeland Security unless it comes with new safeguards like warrant requirements and body cameras for ICE and Border Patrol agents. Republicans are signaling they'll resist those demands, but several GOP senators are calling for an impartial investigation into Pretti's killing. A shutdown would likely have little impact on ICE or Border Patrol. They received massive funding in President Trump's tax bill last year.
Well, the government might not be the only thing shutting down, Karen. Several airlines are cutting flights again due to the weather. So far, about 1,000 flights have been canceled today. That's according to FlightAware. The National Weather Service is warning of another potential significant winter storm later this week. U.S. natural gas is falling today as traders take profits. Prices shot up nearly 30% yesterday amid freezing temperatures.
Nathan, we have several developments on the geopolitical front this morning. UK Prime Minister Keir Starmer is heading to Beijing this week to meet with Chinese leaders. In an interview with Bloomberg, Starmer said the UK will not have to choose between the U.S. and China as he tries not to draw the ire of President Trump. We get more from Bloomberg's Rosalind Matheson.
It's not an easy visit. It will be a very delicate one for Starmer to balance. As he says, like a lot of leaders, he's talking about we're not trying to take a side here. He'll keep talking about the importance of the U.S. relationship, but equally he'll want to come away from this China visit with some proper deals in the bag and to show it's not just rhetoric.
Bloomberg's Rosalind Matheson says this will be the first visit by a British Prime Minister to China in 8 years.
Well, meanwhile, Karen, Canada's Prime Minister Mark Carney spoke yesterday with President Trump, and Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent talked about the conversation with Fox's Sean Hannity.
I was in the Oval with the president today. He spoke to Prime Minister Carney, who was very aggressively walking back some of the unfortunate remarks he made at Davos. And Sean, I'm not sure what the Prime Minister was thinking.
That was Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent speaking with Fox. In Davos last week, Carney spoke about the need for middle powers to band together to counter aggressive coercion by the world's superpowers. Many observers saw his comments as being aimed at the U.S.
Nathan, President Trump is threatening to raise tariffs on South Korean goods to 25%. In a social media post, the president said the country's lawmakers had not lived up to the deal they agreed to, with the new rate applying to autos, lumber, pharmaceutical, and other products. Bloomberg's White House correspondent Josh Wingrove reports.
He's essentially ripping up, or at least for now, the deal and saying that's because the Koreans are slow walking it. I should note that there were a lot of question marks, including from what the American position was about this deal. And so this is another case for countries that are looking at this, including the EU and the UK that had their deals and that then saw the Greenland tariff threat come in. The Trump's deals aren't necessarily, locked in.
If implemented, Bloomberg's Josh Wingrove says the move could have wide-ranging effects on major South Korean companies that export to the U.S., such as Hyundai Motor.
Well, turning to markets now, Karen, shares of major health insurers are tumbling in early trading. That's after the U.S. proposed plans to keep Medicare payment rates flat next year. Analysts had expected an increase as high as 6%. President Trump has been facing criticism for Americans' affordability challenges. He started targeting insurers, blaming them for rising premiums in private Affordable Care Act plans. And checking the stocks this morning, shares of Humana are now down more than 13%. CVS Health is down 10%. United Health down 9%.
Let's turn to the economy now, Nathan, where the Federal Reserve kicks off its two-day policy meeting in Washington later today. And the Fed is widely expected to leave rates unchanged as a steadier jobs market restores a degree of consensus at the central bank. Jan Hatzius is chief economist at Goldman Sachs.
Wage growth has continued to come down. Rent inflation has continued to come down. I think that should get the majority on the FOMC comfortable with some additional cuts in the second half. I don't expect anything this week. I don't expect anything in the next few meetings. But the second half of the year is a different story.
Goldman Sachs chief economist Jan Hatzius made the comments in an interview with Bloomberg at the Goldman Sachs Global Macro Conference in Hong Kong.
Along with the Fed decision this week, Karen, earnings move into full swing with nearly 100 companies reporting through the rest of the week. Today, we hear from General Motors and Boeing. Bloomberg's Tom Busby has more on what to expect from the plane maker.
Although Boeing is expected to report another loss this morning for last quarter, it's expected to report positive cash flow for the second quarter straight, thanks to jet deliveries for the fourth quarter nearly tripling from a year ago. And investors will want to hear about formal jet delivery guidance and whether the company has a better handle on its supply chain and production targets. Bloomberg consensus calls for revenue of $22.58 billion on a loss per share of 46 cents. Tom Busby, Bloomberg Radio.
That's news when you want it with Bloomberg News Now. I'm Karen Moscow.
I'm Nathan Hager, and this is Bloomberg.